All right, let's get right into it. We're about to unpack how one of the absolute worst moments in a company's history, a real brush with total failure, actually became the foundation for its global dominance 75 years later. This is the incredible story of how Toyota's near bankruptcy back in 1950 forged the very principles that make it a powerhouse today. And that's really the core idea we're digging into here. Think about it. The most valuable car company on the planet wasn't the result of some perfect, unbroken string of successes. Nope, it was forged in a moment of pure desperation, a near-death experience that forced it to think in a way that literally none of its competitors were. Just look at this journey. It's absolutely staggering. You go from the very brink of collapse in 1950 to being the world's #1 automaker by 2025. So the real question is, how? How did they pull that off? What was the secret sauce that powered this massive 75-year transformation? Well, to find that answer, we've got to rewind the clock to post-war Japan. The year is 1950, and Toyota is in a world of hurt. We're talking a severe financial crisis. They can't make payroll. The banks are breathing down their necks, demanding a total overhaul. The company was, for all intents and purposes, failing. And it was in that moment, that crucible, that a radical new way of thinking was born. Not as some fancy management theory, but as a pure, desperate survival mechanism. You see, at the absolute heart of this new philosophy was a single sworn enemy. And it wasn't another car company. It was internal waste, or muda in Japanese. Anything, and I mean anything, that didn't add value was seen as a direct threat to their survival. We're talking excess inventory, wasted motion, defective parts, all of it. The entire system they built was designed to relentlessly hunt down and destroy muda. So how'd they do it? With pretty much no money to spare, an engineer named Taiichi Ono came up with 2 foundational pillars. And these didn't come from a textbook. They were born from pure necessity. These 2 ideas, just-in-time and Jidoka, became the blueprints for eliminating waste and would later become the foundation for what the entire world now calls lean manufacturing. But, to really get how unique Toyota's path was, it helps to see what the alternative looked like. So let's flip over to the American model. And honestly, Chrysler's history is the perfect example. Instead of this slow, steady internal improvement, Chrysler's story is a wild ride, a cycle of huge crises followed by dramatic, last-minute rescues. And you can see that cycle so clearly on their timeline. Chrysler's history is just punctuated by these massive, company-altering reinventions. You've got a government bailout, a rocky merger with a German giant, a full-on bankruptcy and a takeover by an Italian company, and then another merger to form this global behemoth. Each one was a total reset, a complete restart. And this famous quote from the legendary Lee Iacocca, it just perfectly captures that American turnaround style. It's all about the charismatic leader, the bold marketing, the focus on the final product as a sales pitch. It's a strategy of recovery and reinvention, which is totally different from Toyota's deep, systemic, continuous improvement of the process. So let's get back to Toyota. How did their approach build a totally different kind of company? Well, the system that was born out of that 1950 crisis was eventually written down, codified into a philosophy of resilience called the Toyota Way. And the goal here wasn't just to survive the next crisis, it was to build a system that was inherently crisis-resistant from the ground up. Okay, let's look at that first pillar, Jidoka. It's sometimes called automation, and the idea actually came from a loom that Toyota's founder, Sakichi Toyoda, invented. This loom would automatically stop itself if a single thread broke. Brilliant, right? So they applied that same logic to making cars. You build the ability to spot an error right into the process itself. You don't just pass a defect on the line, you stop, you fix the root cause, and then you continue. It's about building quality in, not just inspecting for it at the end. And here's the second pillar. Just in time, or JIT. Now, you've probably heard of this one, but a lot of people get it wrong. This wasn't just about being efficient to save a few bucks. Remember, back in 1950, Toyota literally could not afford to have its cash tied up in parts just sitting on a shelf. JIT was a survival tactic, plain and simple. Its purpose was to eliminate the waste of making too much stuff and only making exactly what was needed right when it was needed. So if Jidoka and JIT are like the architecture of the building, Kaizen is the engine that powers the whole thing. It's this deep-seated cultural belief that everything, every single process, can be made better. And crucially, the people actually doing the work are the best ones to figure out how. It's a culture of millions of tiny improvements that, when you compound them over decades, create a massive, almost unbeatable competitive advantage. Okay, now let's fast forward. For decades, you could argue this all just sounds like good management theory. But in 2021, the entire global auto industry got hit with a massive, real-world stress test, the great semiconductor shortage. And this, right here, became the ultimate showdown between these two completely different philosophies. But here's the twist. The reason Toyota was so resilient in 2021 wasn't because of something they did that year. The real lesson came from another crisis a full decade earlier. The devastating 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan absolutely wrecked their supply chain. In response, they did what they always do. They learned. They painstakingly remapped their entire network of suppliers and started building up strategic stockpiles of critical parts, like semiconductors. And this slide just lays it all out. While most car makers were running a super lean model that left them incredibly exposed to the chip shortage, Toyota had already adopted. They had learned from the 2011 crisis that sometimes true resilience means holding a strategic safety net of parts. They basically evolved their own just-in-time philosophy to be even smarter. And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. While the rest of the industry was scrambling, slashing production forecasts left and right, Toyota was able to keep its lines running way better than its rivals. That philosophy, forged in the fires of 1950 and battle-hardened in 2011, paid off big time, right on the bottom line in 2021. So what can we all learn from this? After walking through this 75-year journey, what are the big takeaways for anyone trying to build a business in today's crazy, unpredictable world? Okay, let's break it down. First, having a deep foundational philosophy, one that's born from a real crisis, can be way more powerful than any fancy strategy document. Second, the Toyota model of constant internal improvement, or Kaizen, builds true resilience into the very DNA of a company. That's a huge contrast with the Chrysler model, right? Where external fixes create these cycles of recovery, but not necessarily that deep-seated resilience. And finally, and this is a big one, the 2021 chip crisis proved that supply chain resilience is a core strategic weapon, not just some boring item on an operations checklist. And that really leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. In a world that just seems to be defined by constant disruption, pandemics, shortages, you name it, which path is built to last? Are we building organizations that are designed for resilience from the inside out, like Toyota? Or are we just getting really good at recovering after the next big shockwave hits? The answer to that question might just define the winners and losers of the next 75 years.